It's not me, it's you. You try to control my life. You've taken all my tech from me. You told me I can't play video games anymore. You told me basically that you're in control. I've had enough, Microsoft. Sorry for the delay in getting a video out. I'm in Canada and have been busy, really busy actually, divorcing Windows. That's been my theme. As corporations continue to disgustingly take control of our lives, to charge us subscriptions, to do anything that remotely resembles entertainment that makes us happy, to prevent us from escaping by injecting politics into our entertainment. Um, you know, I've had enough. I've definitely had enough. Sorry, I have a visitor. All right, I gotta make a video. Leave me alone. So, uh, to kind of give you a little bit of background for those of you who may be new, or maybe you don't. Maybe I don't even think I've really talked about growing up in my childhood as much. Um, but I grew up with Microsoft. All right, like I was a PC gaming nerd. I've learned to code a couple times, and then got frustrated with how much time it took to actually code. But as I've grown, I went through MS DOS, Windows 3.1, Windows 95, Windows 98. I was primarily a PC gamer for a great many years, with occasional dips into consoles. I had all the consoles when I was a kid, too. I had the Nintendo, Super NES, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis. ColecoVision was the very first console I ever had. So I've had, a strong background in computers, during which time I demonized the Mac because of their enclosed ecosystem, and their, wanting to gouge 30% on developers has kept a lot of developers from developing, especially since they have such a small market share compared to Microsoft. It started around, I want to say, Windows 8. A little bit here, a little bit of there. Here, use our OneDrive. Are you sure you don't want to use our browser? And it became a billboard and complete control of your computer. Before I left trucking, I bought an MSI Stealth 18, like over a year before I bounced in and out of trucking. But I bought that machine because I wanted something that was powerful that I could play modern games with while I was on the truck. And I have had nothing but problems with this $2,000 laptop. It can run AAA games with bells and whistles mostly on. It's getting a little harder nowadays. mainly because Microsoft is taking up more and more resources in this fucking thing. As you know, I like to make music, and I was using that as my primary music machine. Problem is, if you plug an external monitor into it, or if you do anything wrong, like I cannot get my audio interfaces to work properly in it. There's buzzing and popping and buzzing and shit. And I don't know if this is MSI's or Microsoft's fault, but the only audio drivers that I'm allowed to use, Nahimic to be specific. Now, this is a little nerdy. I know some of you could give a shit. But needless to say, I paid $2,000 for a computer that should have no problem hooking an audio interface up and allow me to play my music. You know, using Ableton and various other things I used to produce music with. Could not get, like, I would tear my hair out. I was trying to delete shit. Windows wouldn't let me delete shit. Every time I stopped the process of something, it would start back up. It had control of my computer, not me. I wanted control. I wanted to get rid of the fucking sound drivers that were causing me a problem and maybe find another solution. Impossible. Fucking impossible. I dug through Reddit, I dug through forums, I dug through everything. I asked AI. Couldn't fix it. $2,000 machine, and I couldn't do half of what I want to do on it. I also used it as my video editing machine and, you know, also for games. Those are the three main tasks in web surfing, obviously, but you can do web surfing on anything. I got tablets that can do web surfing. So that was my primary machine for a lot of things. I did find it very hard to use on the road. It's supposed to be able to be used easily on the road. It would chew through the battery. Just Windows by itself is such a resource hog that it chews through the battery while requiring these brand new expensive machines that are about to be priced out of the consumer market thanks to the AI bubble. And an update on that, I made a previous video about Micron and how they're making your RAM and your SSDs more expensive. Well, guess what? Samsung just doubled its price in response to Corsair pulling out of the market, and Nvidia is also doubling down on the AI market versus the consumer market. Never mind that we helped them build their fucking company over the years, you know, particularly PC gamers. And then, of course, crypto mining kicked us in the nuts there. Price-wise. On top of that, Microsoft has absolutely destroyed another piece of hardware that I bought from Microsoft, which is the Xbox Series X. I bought it. Game Pass was a good selling point. I own a lot of Blu-rays because, let's face it, I'm also trying to divorce Netflix and streaming services and subscriptions. And I mostly have, even though I get a free Netflix subscription with my phone service, which I'm sure they're pricing into my plan. So it's really not a lot to do there because I can't ask them to get rid of that and lower my bill by whatever amount. No, they're just, here you go, enjoy. I don't know what, you know, my phone company decided to get together with Netflix and whatnot. You know, but I could get free Hulu and free Apple TV, which wasn't worth the shit, and all that other stuff. So, leaving that aside, Xbox has decided to jack up their price. I already bitched about this in a previous video, to $30 a month. That is what the price of a game is, in my opinion. A game, $30. You want to know why I say that's the price? Because I am a full supporter of Steam and Valve. You know, even though they're an evil corporation and I don't technically own the games, I have never had a game that I've purchased been removed. Now, I know there was a recent controversy with certain adult-themed games that Europe has forced Valve's hand to remove. But for the most part, all of those games are still floating around there in the seven seas, if you know what I mean. Anyways, Valve has been making value, and they are currently trying to steal market share from Microsoft by developing the Steam machine, Steam OS, which is a Linux-based OS, and allowing you to play your games. They're really going after the gamer market. They don't really care about the applications and that kind of stuff, but you can do those things with SteamOS. But What they're doing is they're doing a translation layer so developers can develop for whatever platform they come on, but can play it on Steam OS or Linux, pretty much, through a translation layer. So I'm all for that, by the way. So I've left. I've decided I want to leave and have actually begun the process of doing so, Microsoft. So the question is, well, Microsoft's all I got. Where the fuck can I go? I can't do anything anywhere else. Well, you have two choices. And I have fully explored one of them and made a decision on what my primary device will be and what all my other devices will be. My primary device, because also before I left trekking, I was pissed off about that audio solution. So I'm like, well, what can I use that will easily allow me to produce music? So I needed a music production laptop that I could be confident worked properly. And can you guess what laptop that would be? That would be the Mac M5 MacBook Pro. Expensive as fuck, by the way. But I wanted to be able to make my music, and I didn't want my operating system to get in the fucking way of that. Turns out, I plugged my audio interface into this MacBook, and it worked immediately well. It has such good onboard audio capability that I don't even need an audio interface if all I'm using is, the laptop itself to make the music. It has low latency. I can hook a MIDI controller to it, and there's not a lot of delay with just the onboard audio of a laptop. I couldn't do that on any Microsoft-based laptop. They were all shit. I'd have a 512 millisecond delay, which means you're playing the instrument or you're singing or whatever, and it fucking gives you a delay. This is the onboard hardware, and it works flawlessly. So I started with the music on that laptop, and then this is the time that Windows is just really pissing me off with all the updates, with all the spying, with this jamming Copilot right up my ass. I don't want to use Copilot. It's the shittiest fucking AI there is. I have AI already, all right, motherfuckers? I have AI. I don't need AI to watch my screen and take screenshots every 3 fucking seconds of everything I put in, anything I type, anything I view, and farm that up to the corporate world. For y'all to sell my data and know everything I do in my personal life, and I spend a lot of my personal life on the internet watching shit, looking at shit, reading shit, posting shit, making shit. I'm doing all kinds of shit. And I don't want fucking Microsoft spying on me for it. Oh, it only stays on your computer until someone asks your AI to tell them what the fuck. You think Microsoft ain't watching all of that shit? You're training their AI on top of that, doing all of that shit, and all the while jacking up the price of everything. Electricity, hardware, you name it, so that the AI even fucking works, because they're using these data centers that we're all fucking getting boned by. Sorry. It's pissing me off, these corporations. This is, and this is one I don't have to deal with if I don't want to. They think I do because I've been dealing with them forever. And they still have a market share of people who are too, illiterate computer-wise to go and do something else. And while I'm not the smartest tool in the shed when it comes to a lot of it, I used to be. I've fallen behind on a lot of the coding and tech that's required. But for what? So I can have some slightly prettier 4K graphics that I can't even fucking see properly anymore because I have to wear fucking readers to do shit. Well, fuck you. I'm not paying $20,000 or $150 a month to look at 4K fucking horseshit with nice pretty reflections. I don't need it. I can go back and play the old fucking retro games, and I have been. Games that when you bought the game, you own the game, you have the game for the rest of your life. I still have a bunch of shit in storage of old games. And we're going to get into all the shit. I'm giving you a Mac review and a Linux review in this video because I've tried and extensively used both at this point. Just to give you some ideas. I'm not going to teach you how to do it because there's plenty of videos that cover that ground, and I'd be more than happy if you went over and watched those creators, but it's not hard to do. So I have a bunch of retro shit. Now there is a third machine that's in this mix that still has Windows on it right now, but that's going to change over this weekend, is I bought the Lenovo Legion Go. Yeah, you own a lot of tech, motherfucker. Yeah, I lived in a truck and I needed all my shit to be as comfortable and as I could be, but I never had time to fucking use any of it because I was too busy driving the truck. That being said, this is supposed to be my, hey, I can pick it up and play fucking video games machine. That's what this is. It's like I'm taking a shit, or whatever I want to do. Like if I want a game, maybe I just want to pick it up, game for 20 minutes, an hour, or maybe while I'm laying in bed or taking a shit, or I'm on the couch hanging out and everybody's got their screens with their phones and I'm looking for a screen. So I that's what this is for. Because gaming on this has been bullshit and I still have yet to be sucked into mobile games. There's plenty of people that swear by it because you're sitting there playing with your phone, but I stare at the phone enough and I want a more gamer experience instead of a pay to win essentially experience, which is what most of the games on that allow. So yeah, that just to tell you how serious I want. I paid $800 for this too. I paid $2,000 for the other one. You know what's ruining both of those? Fucking Microsoft Windows, and they want to pay $30 a month extra if I use Microsoft for gaming. If I use their Game Pass Plus, whatever the fuck it is. So they're sticking their nose in and they're pushing me towards that. I get ads for it and all this stuff. Hey, I noticed you're not subscribed to Game Pass anymore. Gee, I wonder why that is, you stupid fucks. Do I want you to remind me on the hardware I purchased as an advertisement? I'd like to have an ad-free life, to be honest with you. That's why I bought the fucking thing. But no, you're going to serve me fucking ads when I'm doing other things. Do I use Brave browser a lot. We'll just put it that way. That's the problem with these corporations. They've gotten a little too much control-y. They're a little too authoritarian. They've forgotten us customers, and now they're leaving us behind. Now they're taking all the hardware and playing with themselves. But all of the tech companies are in this little circular economy that is above our heads, and we're down here at the bottom of the ocean going, hey, where'd the sunlight go? And we're being crushed. We're absolutely being crushed, and as far as I can tell, there's not much we could fucking do about it, other than to stop buying shit, obviously. And I'm looking at that solution right now. Now, some of you are going to be in the comments like, well, Apple is a big evil company too. Yeah, they are. Yep. But you know what they're not doing? They're not shoving AI down my throat, probably because their AI is kind of bullshit. I can go into my MacBook and turn off all of it. No Siri bullshit, because Siri started popping up when I first started running it, and I'm like, how do I turn that? That's the first thing I want to turn off. I do not want Siri listening to me and trying to do all that. And they had all the options conveniently there to turn all that off. Try and do that with Copilot. It is so, integrated into every fucking thing you do now on Windows 11 that you can't avoid it. The general theme for this video is if you can stop yourself from getting to because Windows 10 they removed support for. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed out an update into Windows 10 that completely bricked it entirely, telling you that if you have an older computer, you have to buy one with a new TPM chip, which is a security chip, to continue to use Windows, period. And if you have one of those old machines, well, you guys chuck that right into the fucking ocean, and pollute the world with it because it's useless. Well, guess what? It's not useless because you can put Linux on. So there's that. You could probably even put Mac OS on those if you were savvy enough to do so. Because there used to be Mac OS for Intel-based systems. Now, the other thing Apple has always done is charged you an extremely obscene amount for memory and storage on their device that you can't fucking upgrade. Okay. And that used to be an advantage Microsoft Windows had, is you could shop around and piecemeal some nice inexpensive storage solutions for your memory and your hard drive space. Well, guess what? That's done. Now, the Windows machine prices for hardware are at the same price point as what Apple's been doing ever since I can fucking remember. So, yeah. But the difference is people don't upgrade their Macs very often. You want to know why that is? Because when Apple's Mac ecosystem, and you have no idea how this is making me cringe after being years of being a Windows guy. You know, there's still people rocking their M1 because it does everything they need it to do. They don't need to upgrade. And they're probably not gamers, to be fair. But they're happy. Had no need to go out and constantly spend, like every couple years, spend thousands and thousands of dollars so that they could do the latest shit. No, the M2 and M3 can do all the music shit I did. I bought the M5 because it just came out, literally, and I wanted that little bit of extra oomph in case I get, in the future, get more advanced with my music production. And I also want to be able to edit video on it if possible. So, like, I know that this M5, assuming I don't drop it on the floor or something bad happens to it, is likely going to last me the next 10 years. This is going to last me a long time. It can do everything I need to do currently with music production. And if I want, I could just stop upgrading my music shit and be happy. And quite honestly, for the type of music I make, I can be happy where I am with it. And then anything else, I'm sure I could do something to pull from AI in some way. I still only have one AI subscription, $30 a month, and I use it for my video and thumbnails and images that I do. And it's already trained on what I look like, so I can put myself in any situation. So that's a separate thing. That can be used on any system because it's web-based. That's the first thing you got to understand, is if everything you do is web-based, then it doesn't matter. You don't need Windows anymore. You can go to Mac, you can go to Linux, and do all your web-based shit. No problem whatsoever. I am not sponsored by Mac, by the way, or any of the shit that I mentioned in this. Definitely not by fucking Windows. So, Mac for music production, using Ableton Live or FL Studio, both of them. I have both installed, along with a whole bunch of VSTs, Native Instruments VSTs, Arturia. I have a lot of Arturia VSTs for music making. Flawless. No problem whatsoever. I did have to have a dongle drive, an external 4 terabyte drive, to be able to hold all of the extra sounds, but I was doing that on my Windows machine. It only took me a day to get transferred over and get everything up and running for music. I'm able to plug my MPC in because I do have an MPC, and it all works no problem, no issues. And it works better. This little fucking laptop that can run on battery for hours at full performance. Like, I sat and gamed on this little fucking laptop. The size of it's like maybe a slightly larger than my tablet. I hook it to a monitor. That's what's playing the little fireplace right now, is my MacBook right now. Runs flawlessly for hours on battery, under heavy load, gaming or what have you. Editing videos, all of that I can do. I've edited a video already on this channel on my MacBook, a couple of them now. And this video as well will be edited on my MacBook. And I did it on battery. And it's just so seamless, easy. The charging mechanism's great. It has a nice charger that came with it. Plug it in. And it's a little magnetic thing, clips right into it. They design their shit to make it easy on you. Quality product. Something corporations stopped giving a shit about. Most of them stopped caring. For some reason, Apple Now we can get into the weeds here on how each iPhone is just seemingly just the same fucking iPhone that you had last year. We can get into that, or the time that they've slowed down their. I mean, there's a lot of shady shit Apple's done, but they didn't fuck over yet. And I'm not giving them a complete pass here. They are a big corporation, but they're not as big in the britches as Microsoft is. And they make their own silicon. They make their own processors, their own graphics chips. Well, actually, it's all integrated into one big fucking happy thing. That's what the M5 is. It's not an NVIDIA. It's not an AMD. It's none of that. It is its own chip. Now, they only have maybe, I think, 12%, 10%, 11%, somewhere in there, market share. So developers aren't encouraged to develop for it. It's kind of an afterthought because, when you create a piece of software or a game, you want the biggest market to sell to. And we're in the early days of Microsoft really pissing people off. Valve, I believe, is coming for their lunch. They've already gone from 1%. In the last 4 years, Linux has gone from 1% to 5% of the market share for people using their OS. And I do believe Apple is on the rise too. Mac is on the rise too. Now, I never thought I would be a Mac person, but it's now my daily driver. It does 90% of what I want to do. We'll get to what Linux did wrong to lose, because I really wanted it to be Linux. I'm not, because open source, you can change it easily. You've got full control of everything, but it requires a lot more technical knowledge than Mac does, and a lot more of your time to get working properly. But my Mac out of the box so far has done 90%. We'll get into the 10% it can't do. 90% of what I want it to do. So now the biggest comments are going to be gaming. I can't play my games on Mac. Now granted, I'm not going to be playing them the same as if I had the latest $2,000 5090 NVIDIA fucking graphics card. That's just stupid. First of all, do you really care? Do you really pixel peep to that point? Plus the screen itself on the laptop, even my big laptop, my MSI Stealth 18, that's an 18-inch screen, by the way. 1080p is fucking fine. 4K is a waste on that, especially if you're like me and you need this to appreciate it, which I still, even with 1080, need that. I have grown up watching games get progressively more hungry for graphics power and, realistic real-time rendering and all of this other shit to make everything fucking as pretty in 4K as possible. And in that same time period as these more demanding, graphically intensive games came out, gameplay has gone to the toilet. There hasn't been hardly any original AAA games. I lost track of how many fucking Call of Duties there are and how many, Battlefields and, all of this Minecraft inspired shit. It's been continuously putting new graphics on old games and not one original use of the new technology, and AAA gaming, but the big budget games that can take advantage of that level of hardware that can put development teams and develop in 3 years what used to take 10 years together, and now the AI slop they're injecting into it and they're laying off people. Gee, I wonder what's going on. It has something to do with AI, doesn't it? As they try to put AI bullshit in games instead of paying actual artists or anybody to create things for games. Leaving all that aside, the fun and enjoyment of games has declined to the point where I very rarely play newer games. I still play games that I played in 2003, 2004, that time frame. And indie games. games that a bunch of people in a garage put a bunch of 5 developers together, and here we go. There's a game. Like Valheim is a good example of it. Something that was a relatively original, that gave me something different to do. I've already done all the FPS bullshit. If I want to play an FPS right now, you know what I boot up? Quake. Quake 2. Really old shit like that. Or I'll go back to the heyday of Battlefield or something like that. Instead of this modern war bullshit, buy our skin leather fucking DLC pack bullshit. No, I'll hop into a fucking older game. There's still people playing, and I'll do that. Steam allows you to do that. GOG allows you to do that. Good old games. These are different PC platforms. So basically, gaming is an issue with Mac to a degree, because there are some games that no matter what I've tried will not work. I use Crossover. That is a game that will put a virtual machine together. They call them bottles. And it runs Steam. And then through that, you can play, I'd say, 85% of Windows games work properly. Like I can play Grand Theft Auto 5 unenhanced version, but anything that starts newer, that's getting into ray tracing and a lot of the AI, scaling things that are going on with the newer NVIDIA cards and that kind of stuff. Basically, those games, they just will not work properly on there. On the Linux side, they're a step ahead. There are some games that I was able to get running in Linux that I couldn't get working on my Mac. And I use Linux as that next buffer, because I'm putting Linux on here and using SteamOS style games. Actually, Bazzite, but it has SteamOS integrated with it. And Valve has been making a translation layer for Windows games, and a couple of the games that I couldn't get to work on here, I have gotten to work on Linux. But that's it, and I had to purchase Crossover. I think it was like $20. It was on sale. So that's one option. I've set up a huge retro gaming, as far as emulation goes, huge retro gaming setup, all on my Mac. No problems with emulation. Mac makes all of those as well. So if you like playing really old games that don't exist in the world anymore, and you have the discs like I do and stuff like that, or games that you've purchased, because we don't do anything illegal here. That is the way to do it, emulation. And I'm pleased to say, not only does it do it, it does it exceptionally well. RetroArch is the only thing that I had trouble getting working on it. But it still works. It just requires a little bit more of a pain in the ass. So I got rid of RetroArch, to be honest. I use DOSBox for my old DOS games, and these are games that were in the '80s that I used to have. They used the PC speaker and 4 colors to play them. That's how far back into my history I go gaming wise. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, there's options there. There's 86box if you wanted to create a virtual machine, and it emulates the actual hardware from the '90s. 46 Pentiums, all of that. And you can find free copies, that Microsoft doesn't care that you have right now. I'm sure they'll clamp down as more and more people look to go back in time. But there's, you can search for it. You can put Windows 98. I have Windows 98 machine, virtual machine with 30 gigs of hard drive space. And so all of those games I have the CD-ROMs to and all of that stuff from that era, I can throw them on there. I got Dungeon Keeper 2 working on this thing through using a virtual machine. So that's a possibility. Now, granted, this is a little bit next level. This isn't like base level user stuff. This is some more advanced shit. But it does it, is my point. So, bottom line for the Mac, newer games, unless like Cyberpunk 2077 works on the Mac, and it was just on sale for $20 on Steam. So, if you're looking for something a little more modern to run on your M5, I haven't tested it yet. I don't know how well it works. I know I never played it because it was buggy as shit when it released. So when I saw on the winter sale, that's the other reason I like Valve, by the way. It's the why I think that they aren't going to screw us the way Microsoft is and all the other gaming, Nintendo raising their prices, Xbox and Sony PlayStation, all jacking prices up, trying to give you $80 games. Well, Valve's giving me a first run title, for $20. Do the math. Who's looking out for gamers still? And I love that they're using they donate a lot of their code open source as far as SteamOS goes and all of that. And if you don't know what open source is, that means everybody is free to take that and create their own product, even sell it. It's open source. Free for everyone. You will own everything and they won't own shit. That's what open source is. So, and Linux is huge on that. Not so much on the Mac side. But if a game is using more of those modern effects in Mac, Valve obviously isn't trying to make a translation layer for Macs because they're selling hardware. They're doing their own thing. But they are very good at telling you what games work for Mac and what don't in the Steam store. And I have old Blizzard games from before when this is the one part of Microsoft that still has a piece for me because they bought Blizzard and I own games in Blizzard. Some of the games I own don't exist in their true form anymore, like Warcraft 3. I have Warcraft 3 Reforged. I used to have Warcraft 3 before, and I couldn't quite get a powerful, because you require a very powerful machine to emulate more powerful machines like Windows XP 2005, 2006 era. That era of computers are a little harder to make virtual machines for. But I'm working on it. I'm going to keep my eye on it to see how, if it's even possible to do that or to buy a retro PC from that era and make it so that I can play games from that era. Because I got all of the Warcraft discs and StarCraft and all of that shit. And I still have to log into this Microsoft-owned bullshit just to play those games. I would love to play them in their original form. With the exception, obviously, online play is an issue there. So, but I will say, some of those games from Blizzard, owned by Microsoft, they work on Mac. Video editing and photography. As you know, I've already divorced Adobe. I will never use an Adobe product again as long as I live. My current solutions are a little bit for editing pictures and whatnot. Obviously, AI is a very easy way to do it on the internet, and there's no shortage of places to go to work on images using AI. Also, I am familiar with Blender, a 100% free open source, works on Mac. Basically 3D graphics software, but it's like a jack of all trades. It has video editor built in. It has its own coding platform. It has, a bunch of shit aside from just making 3D graphics that you can do on there. You can do compositing on there. Basically, it's free and it does everything, but it has a very steep learning curve. But I've already been messing with Blender for years, so I use that if I want to do any layering of images or anything like that, because I can just do it in 3D and tweak it and play with it and do all of that, and I don't need to pay $100 whenever I'm not using it, or to continue to pay a subscription and then have Adobe charge me $100 to cancel my subscription. And that's after the hour it took for me to figure out how to fucking cancel it and to begin with. Hunter, you charge me to leave you. You think I'm coming back? Fuck you. Take notice for all you other greedy corporations out there. You know, I am not alone in people that have abandoned Adobe, and I'm definitely not going to be alone on people abandoning Microsoft. So, you got too greedy. I'm sorry. I hope AI provides for you and it's not a real bubble that's going to erase 60 to 70 trillion from the economy when it crashes. I hope you're happy over there. Goodbye, but don't come back, all right? Don't come crawling back to us when you go all in on fucking AI and it .com bubble all over again. Don't come crawling to me. I ain't gonna fucking buy any of your shit. I don't care if you lower the price at this point. You pissed me off so much and lost my trust. That's what it's about. You could come out with Windows 12 and it could be like Windows 98 all over again. Nice, simple, easy to use. Got all the shit. Well, not easy to use, but it got all the things I need and I could control my system and you're not mining it for my data and you're not doing all the bullshit. No more subscriptions. You could fix all of that and I still will never fucking trust you enough again to come back to your ecosystem once I get out. And I'm getting out. I'm working on it. So, one of the tests I've done with my Mac is just using my Mac. And for the last week, that's what I've been doing. I've been using my Mac, setting it up, doing all the things, editing video. I will say editing video with the M5. Now, there's better, more expensive Macs you can get, and they're very expensive. The M5 Pro hasn't released yet, but I'm almost positive that this will address that issue when it comes out, and it's probably going to be like $3 or $4 grand. So I don't know. That's too much for me, especially now. But I will say that I was able to adequately edit my videos. I'm doing 1080p now. I'm no longer obsessed with 4K like I used to be. When I was a photographer, and in a lot of parts of this earlier forms of the channel, I was obsessed with image quality and giving you the best things I can. I'm using one of my worst cameras. You know, it's still pretty good. It's still a nice camera. It's a 1-inch sensor. And I'm filming at 1080p because why bother? It can do the internal down, scaling inside the camera, as most cameras can nowadays, that will scale their sensor all the way down to 1080 and give you a similar crisp image that you would get. Only, you're not going to sit next to your 52-inch 4K TV and be like, oh, it's nice and crisp. It's so beautiful. Which no one does. 90% of people are watching my shit on one of these anyway. Very few people are watching me on a big fucking TV. And if you are, then you're really getting all close and personal with me. I prefer it to be a little blurry, to be honest with you. Especially with this beard that makes so many people happy. But, leaving that aside, that's where I'm at. I am happy with my Mac, and I'm hoping this Mac lasts me for the next 10 years. And I really, really hope Apple is watching the mistakes that Windows is making and doesn't do the same thing. Now, don't get me wrong. Apple is definitely, they're trying to rope me into their ecosystem without really offering much to me. Apple Music, not a fan. Apple TV, I had it for free. Tried it out. It's not even worth for free. I had it removed from my thing because Apple decided to raise the price of Apple TV. And it would have raised my phone bill. So I was like, nope, remove it. Don't need it. Take me off of that. Because my phone company was passing the expense. Because before it was just free. When they raised their price, then my phone company was like, no, we're not paying that extra. And they tried to raise my phone bill automatically. I had to call in and spend 2 hours of my life to make that not happen. It's everywhere. This shitification is everywhere. And it's really going to be like a full-time job almost to get pulled out of these ecosystems that they've roped us in with, convenience and free shit. Free shit. Yeah, it's free until they finally give you the bill. And the bill is coming due. I don't know if you're noticing, but anything that you got for free, like I had somebody in the comments telling me they got Windows for free. No, you didn't get Windows for free. There's two prices you pay for Windows. Yeah, you didn't have to go into Best Buy like in the olden days and say, I want to buy Windows. And they give you a CD with a fucking key and you take it and you go back home and you install it and you spend 4 hours of your life getting it working properly because drivers and all the other shit that used to have to be a thing. I had to relive that, by the way, when I put Windows 98 virtual machine on here, because it simulates the hardware and you have to go find the drivers and do all that. All of which are still out there on Internet Archive, all the old drivers and shit, everything you need for like a Voodoo card and that kind of stuff, still out there. Anyways, no, you didn't have to go to the store to buy it. It doesn't mean you didn't fucking buy it. First of all, leaving aside the fact that Windows 11 just nuked a whole bunch of old computers and said, oh, well, fuck you. We're done with you. And if you want to continue with Windows, guess what? You want all that shit that you've had for Windows over years to continue to work? You're going to have to buy a new computer with a chip that we need so that our AI works properly. So we can spy on everything you do and easily access it. So, you're paying for it two ways. First of all, they're working it into the Windows machine that you purchase. Any machine that you purchase that has Windows installed on it is priced into the price of that system. You are paying, I think it's $120, $150, probably $200 now. Probably $250, I don't know. Microsoft's pretty greedy now. But last I heard it was like $150. That was a year ago. Don't quote me on that. But you're paying for it. Not only that, the market is such that you just can't walk in and be like, I don't want Windows. I'm going to put Linux on this computer. Can you give me a computer without Windows? Give me all the hardware, but I don't want that OS. I don't want it installed. You don't have that option. Your only other option, obviously, is Mac. You can choose between Mac and Windows. That's it. You can't just buy the hardware without the OS installed on it and then install it yourself later. Nope, not allowed anymore. Still feel like you're in a capitalist free country right now? Basically, you are forced to buy Windows. If you buy a new machine with the intent of putting Linux on it, you're going to pay for Windows. Windows is still going to get their money out of you. Well, that money out of you. They're also selling all your data, as it takes a screenshot every 3 seconds. Don't think that they aren't storing that data on your computer. We're storing it on your computer. And then they can ask your computer to tell them what you're doing because they've already put that in there. But no, they're not directly spying, but they can ask your AI those things. So, and the AI will tell them. That's already been demonstrated by hackers, nonetheless. You're paying with your privacy, and you'll be like, well, I don't do anything. I didn't do anything. They can spy on me all they want, as long as I can play Fortnite and blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? They got all your credit card data. They know everything you're looking at on the internet. They do all of that. Even if you're not using their browser, they now know, because whatever browser you're using, they're getting screenshotted every 3 seconds. Which is using resources of the computer that you paid thousands of dollars for, that are no longer available for you to use with your games and your software and all of that shit. Every 3 seconds. I don't know if Apple does that, but I will tell you, the fact that I can take that laptop, unplug it from the wall, and go anywhere and literally be on it for like 4 or 5 hours at a time before I have to maybe think about charging it. And in fact, it hasn't told me my battery's low every time I've taken it off battery. My MSI laptop, 30, 45 minutes with just Windows running. I gamed on that last night for an hour and a half while laying in bed. Just And it was pretty intense games, visually, graphically intense games, but not NVIDIA got to have a $2,000 card, level. So that tells me that OS is not hogging up my hardware that I paid for. Apple is perfectly content to gouge you in the beginning when you buy the hardware. You're paying more than what the hardware is actually worth because it has a big fucking Apple on it, right? And they made it, so they are allowed to price it however they want. And they're trying to price to compete with Windows and, that side of the house. And yeah, they seem to still value their customers to a degree, their consumers. Mainly because corporations, I think, honestly, I think the reason Apple hasn't gone the way of Microsoft is they're not, a huge market share of corporate computers. They're not. They got a decent amount in the education system, and a lot of creative lefty types are all in on it, and a lot of creative music, graphical people, they have used it over the years. Not so much gamers, though. That's the thing. That's the one thing that Apple could seize upon is doing what Valve is doing and trying to allow people to access Windows games that are developed for Windows through a translation layer on their machine. They have the hardware to do it. Benchmark wise, the M5 has the best single core performance of all of the processors out there right now, I believe. I think that was one of the benchmarks that sold me. It was like, yeah, multi-core not as good, single core best there is. And it's just a matter of time before they release a multi-core that does similar performance. So the M5 Pro is probably going to be on par with anything Intel or AMD are pushing out as far as processing power goes. But they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it. So that's the downside. Price, and they do want the hardware ecosystem. There are things that are a little janky, like their keyboard took some getting used to because it has different key shortcuts and stuff that you have to learn. But overall, when I could fairly quickly adapt and figure out what keyboard commands are similar to my Windows. So that was a little bit to learn. Editing videos was definitely not as fast as my MSI, but good enough at 1080p. No problem there. Music, flawless. Would never go back for music production. Music production, all in. And Linux can't even touch that, by the way. So let's get to Linux. Now, to give you some context, I have a desktop at home that has been abandoned by Windows. It has a RTX 2070 Super video card. It was an i7 something something something. It's from a while ago. And it was sitting there gathering dust in my little room. I usually use my Xbox Series X to either game or watch content or what have you on my TV. And I look for my Xbox Series X, which is another portal into this suck you dry system of fucking Microsoft. And then, it has a Blu-ray player on it. I have actual Blu-ray players that I bought when I was trying to become a reseller. So I have a Blu-ray player that's just a Blu-ray player. So I don't necessarily need it for that. Honestly, I'm probably going to wipe that thing and sell it and just put my Blu-ray player in its place for my Blu-rays. Because I do have a bunch of Blu-rays because, as you know, physical media. I don't like the idea of owning nothing being happy. If they decide to flip the switch on me, or I can't use all of their fucking cloud shit, well, guess what? I still want something I can go do to entertain myself. So I have a Blu-ray collection, and I continue to keep an eye out when I go thrifting, and I still go thrifting to this day. Although thrift store prices have been going up, but not as bad as everything else. But bad enough to where you can't make money reselling. Side tangent aside. So I had this computer, and it's literally sitting a few feet away from this Xbox Series X, which I was using to watch YouTube and do all the smart TV shit. My TV also has these ability, but I'm not a fan of smart TVs anymore because they're doing the same thing Microsoft is doing and forcing. In fact, I just heard that there's a LG, I believe, is forcing you to use Microsoft Copilot on the fucking smart TV. Listen, when I buy a TV, I want a nice display with a good refresh rate, preferably 4K, HDR, all the bells and whistles. But I don't want to have to fucking get spied on by fucking software or pay subscriptions to use it. I also still own, by the way, a 1080p TV that was top of the line in the early 2000s that used to I hooked my Xbox to it. I used to have a PlayStation 2 and all of that other shit, and it worked flawlessly. Still have that around. I don't need to buy a new smart TV. I will probably never buy a new smart TV. Unless something happens like that causes me to lose all, my shit. Never again. I also have a smart TV that I don't use any of the smart features on. I don't connect it to the internet. That's kind of the point. I never connect it. And it asks me every once in a while, update. No, no. And I bought it early on. I think now they have smart TVs that probably won't work unless you're connected to the internet. I guess that's probably the move they would do anyway. I don't know for sure. Don't quote me on that. That's my opinion on where I think the smart TV thing is going. But once again, most people, they're using this. My girlfriend never watches TV. She has a tablet and this. That's all she does when she's entertaining herself. I still like a bigger screen because my eyes are getting older. You know, this monitor I've had for a great many years. I use it when I'm here to hook my shit to when I'm in Canada. So I have a slightly bigger screen to look at when I need to. But that's all I need it for. I don't need it to be smart for me. I don't need all of the bells and whistles of streaming and all of that. I have machines that I can do that sort of thing with without asking permission from my corporate overlords. So I went and installed Bazite Linux on this machine. The reason I went with Bazite is it has a Steam OS, and I think it does have Steam OS as part of it, or it's a lot like Steam OS in terms of the games, including the translation layer, Proton, which is what allows you to play Windows games on Linux. And I could get a great deal of my games to work through Steam OS on Linux. There's not a lot of games made exclusively or directly for Linux. There's very few, to be exact. Steam has a few, but sorry, the cat came to visit me again. All right, let me work. All of the wonderful shit that Valve is doing with their own OS and hardware, they're making it available for Linux users, obviously because Linux is the backbone of SteamOS anyway. It's Valve's fork off of Linux. You got Linux Mint, Linux Arch Linux, all these different flavors and forks of Linux where people took the original source code and they made it their version of an operating system. And there's just so many. That's the number one problem for people switching to Linux is picking the right distribution because different ones have different strengths. There's some distributions which are very bare bones. You got to really learn to do your shit to use them, like Arch Linux. And you got Linux Mint, which is kind of like a Windows similar experience, but you're going to have problems with hardware support. So I had this system, this desktop system with a NVIDIA card, and I also had an old laptop that no longer is supported thanks to Windows. And I put Bazelite Linux on that. Um, the desktop, even though it had a NVIDIA card and an Intel processor, because Bazelite Linux supposedly works a little bit better on AMD shit. Uh, the desktop worked no problem. I didn't have any issues gaming on it. Retro gaming on it worked fine. In fact, that's my backup retro gaming setup. Um, or if I just want to sit down with a controller in my little room and on my TV, play some games, this desktop is set up to do all of that for me. Watch YouTube on it. Although I will say the YouTube, for some reason, the performance on Linux for watching video content on Bazelite Linux, video quality seemed to drop weirdly. I couldn't figure out what the problem was, which is this is one of the downsides of Linux. It has bugs, things that you're going to run into, and it's not necessarily a Linux bug. It's a Linux with your hardware. An operating system is designed to communicate your needs or your programs, that you use. It's designed to interface between them and the physical hardware, the computer, the processor, the memory, the graphics card, the sound, all of that. The problem I have with Linux, and it really demonstrated itself to me when I put it on the laptop, which has two video cards in it. But one's a mobile card, the other isn't. The sound, when I put it on my laptop, the sound card didn't work properly. I could only get sound out of the um, headphone jack. The speakers on the thing itself wouldn't work. I could also get sound through HDMI, but that leads me to the other problem. Whenever I tried to game through hooking an HDMI to a TV to my laptop, because I was hoping that I could just have this as be my portable hook it to any TV solution, which I no longer need because the Mac does all of that. Um, but at the time, I was still deciding what I wanted my daily driver to be, the one that I cart around because I travel. I couldn't get the games that to run through to the TV very well. I assume it was probably using the Intel's bullshit display because it had two display adapters. It's purely a hardware problem. The other issue I had is without a TV connected, there was lots of graphical glitches going on. So the Linux was having a problem, or Steam, one of the two, was having an issue with the actual video card that I had in there. And digging for drivers yourself for Linux, you have to have a computer science degree, all right? Because you have to know how to use your fucking terminal and all the commands there. I know very little about using the terminal other than asking AI, how do I use the terminal? And it tells me what to type in it, which is not the best fucking way to do it as far as computers go, because that can lead you down a rabbit hole that destroys your OS and you have to start over again, which is a possibility. But what it demonstrated to me is Linux isn't ready yet. Linux itself is not ready to go mainstream because it was too hard to do that. Another situation I tried to take my laptop. My mother needed help with printing some documents, and her laptop doesn't work anymore. Do you know why her laptop doesn't work anymore? Because it's fucking, we're talking early 2000s laptop. And yeah, there's no option to upgrade that to Windows. I told her I'd probably put Linux on it for her at some point so it at least worked. But leaving that aside, she needed me to print some stuff. So I had to hook to her printer with one of my laptops. So I'm like, let's see if I could do it with my Linux laptop. Finding drivers, I did find the Linux drivers for it, but then just to get it set up, I couldn't get it to work. I fucked around with it for almost an hour, and I was like, you know what? All right, well, Microsoft won this battle. So I took my MSI, hooked it up, downloaded the drivers for Windows, worked fine, and printed her stuff for her. So yeah, that was my experience there. Linux forced me to go back to Microsoft. I didn't try the same experiment with the printer with Mac, but I'm sure it probably would have been similar to Windows in experience. It's just at the time I was doing something on the Mac and I didn't want to interrupt that to deal with this printer issue. Um, so yeah, anything weird hardware wise is going to be a pain in the ass. So Valve is tackling that issue, by the way. They are creating a hardware called the Steam Machine. Now, they've done this in the past and failed, by the way. This is not their first time taking a shot at Microsoft. But it's going to come pre-installed with Steam OS, which also has Linux. You can jump out and do all the Linux things in as well. And I'm really interested to see if they can pull that off. That's not happening till 2026, and it remains to be seen how this big memory card hardware issue is going to affect them and the price of their system. And but if you can't wait, and you preferably if you have an AMD based system, and you don't mind being a science project. Now I'm still experimenting. I'm about to, like I said, over the weekend, I'm going to put Linux on the Lenovo Legion Go and get that working the same. And it should theoretically perform better than the desktop in my little room because it has AMD graphics and AMD processor in it. And it should be just like a Steam Deck at that point, which something that you can currently buy is a Steam Deck for a fairly decent price too. And that's hardware made by Valve. They're small. They're taking on a Goliath and they're doing a good job with it. Will I buy a Steam machine? I don't plan on it, to be honest, because I already have all of this, and if I can't make it happen with all of this, that's another reason the Mac is my daily driver right now. And plus I have this that I'll have Steam running on, and if they come out with a better version of Steam OS that I don't have to use Bazite with, then maybe I can do that route. But it sounds to me like they also plan on releasing Steam OS itself once they get it refined for all the, because you got to take into account the Linux's weak point is all the hardware differences. We all have different computer configurations and all of this shit. And unlike Windows, which has all of that data, all the drivers and all of that can adapt to whatever hardware you're putting it on. I'm not saying that's flawless because Lord knows we've had issues with that over the years. But right now, generally, if you buy a computer that already has Windows on it, it works with that hardware, or so on and so forth. Whereas a lot of the hardware that I've converted to Linux was made with Windows in mind. I believe it wasn't made with Linux in mind. So Linux has to adapt to that hardware. And no one distribution seems to have all the hardware in it as far as knowing plug and play, that kind of stuff. Plug and play OS came out back in Windows 98 where it could detect your hardware and your hardware would tell it what the drivers are and all of that kind of shit. And later on, we had things that when you plug them in would transfer the drivers to the OS. Linux doesn't do any of that fucking bullshit as far as I could tell. At least not the distro that I'm using with Bazite. Bazite is supposed to be also designed in such a way that you can't fuck it up. It's really hard to go in and change something that'll brick your system. Whereas other distributions of Linux, you can definitely just hose your whole OS, lose all your data, that kind of stuff. So steep learning curve with Linux, and I quite frankly don't have the time. I'm sure if I dug in deep, I could get to that same 90% as I am with Mac with very little learning curve to get into it with Mac. I think it took me 2 days to really start to, this does that does this, and anything that I didn't, know with the Mac, I was able to easily do on this, where as far as AI. I asked AI to help me, and it would help me, and seemed to be fairly accurate in what it did. Um, However, doing that with Linux, the AI liked to try and put me in the terminal, and honestly, I don't understand the terminal enough to dig around in it. Um, if you're just doing basic bitch computing, Linux is fairly easy to get into. If you're not a gamer, if you're just surfing the web, any web browsing activities, obviously there's LibreOffice if you want to do productivity in that realm. I didn't even bother to attempt video editing on there, though you can run Blender on Linux for free, by the way, and edit video with Blender. Um, I use DaVinci Resolve. I do believe they have a Linux version, but I just didn't. Because of the other issues I was having hardware wise, I did not bother to try and use one of my licenses for DaVinci to put on a Linux machine, especially since I already bought the Mac. And I knew the Mac would work flawlessly for video editing because guess what? A lot of video editing in Hollywood is done on Macs as well. So, yeah, overall, that's what lost Linux the battle for me. I am still going to mess with Linux and I don't know that it can overtake Mac, and if it does, I'll let you know. In my daily drivers, as I'm more reaching for my Linux machine than my Mac. And I still have my Windows machine. So where does that leave me and Microsoft? Well, obviously, I can't fully divorce them because I have purchased things that do not work on my Mac. And when I say purchase, I mean I'm licensed to use them. But there's two games. Age of Wonder 4 I could not get to work on either. Well, actually, no. Age of Wonder 4 worked on Linux, so I don't need to go on my Windows machine. But basically, my Windows laptop, my $2,000 fucking computer I bought, I'm only going to use it when I need to use something that I can't do on Mac or I can't do on Linux. So it's third place. $2,000 I spent on that fucking thing. And I think there's only like one or two games, like Spider-Man 2, which I don't play very often, so I don't feel myself reaching for it anymore. But basically, if there's a game I already bought, or a brand new, spanking new AAA title that just will not run on my Mac or my Linux, because Mac doesn't have all of the ray tracing and all the scaling and all the modern shit, which is pushing me back away from those. Like, I won't buy one of those games unless it's just outstanding. Like, unless it's just the best fucking game ever, most original shit. If it's just a reskinned version of other bullshit, I don't need it anymore. I go play an older game on my Mac or on my Linux machine. But if it's something that I absolutely can't do on either of my machines, I'll fire up my MSI, wait the 2 hours because I don't run it very often of Windows updates that it's going to fucking do. In fact, I'll probably leave it on the day before so it can update everything and not bother me too much. And try and get the Windows updates done. That's how bad it is. Like, I know when I turn on, if I haven't used my MSI laptop in a while, when I turn it on, Microsoft's going to use my laptop for an hour before I can even touch it. They'll say it's running in the background, but that's shit that I can't use for whatever I'm doing. But music production, I'm not going to touch it, obviously. It had all that was what initially started this whole quest to leave Microsoft. I am so angry that I bought this $2,000 laptop that is now going to be a paperweight. Yeah, someone is going to tell me to put Linux on it. Guess what? It's from the same company of the old laptop that I had that Linux didn't work very well on. It's easy for me to put Linux on an old machine that is just sitting there, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, who cares? If it turns into a brick, it's a brick, and I put it on there. I am going to be really upset if I try to put Linux on this $2,000 fucking laptop and it don't work 100%. You know, if it has graphical glitches and all of that, because it's also a dual video card system. Where I don't know why they had to do it that way. You know, one video card's plenty. But and it's Nvidia, so drivers issue. It's a newer Nvidia card, so it's probably even harder for Linux to fucking figure it out because it's all drivers, and Nvidia is not updating drivers very often for Linux. That has to be done by the Linux community, I believe. So it's using non-standard drivers, and of course, games don't develop with those drivers in mind. They develop with Nvidia's drivers, which basically means there are some games that I'm still going to have to turn on this laptop to use. I basically paid $2,000 just to play a few extra games that I can't play on here. Um, but I haven't felt the urge to play those games since I've been daily driving this, so I haven't turned it on in a while. I got to turn it on because I'm using it. I've been using it, and I hope they watch me do it with their little screenshot every fucking 3 seconds. I've been using it to make boot drives so that I convert other machines to Linux. And I hope they notice me doing that and they put it in their little algorithm because I heard Microsoft is bitching that not enough people are using Copilot right now. Maybe I'm not alone in divorcing fucking Microsoft. So, but that's where I'm at with it, all right? Uh, in the comments below, are you thinking of leaving Microsoft or have you already left Microsoft? I know some of you told me you've already switched to Linux. And really, it depends on how, Linux would be fine for just doing web shit and light productivity. Music production, I tried it on Linux. Nope. It's a big nope. The only thing that works is FL Studio, and then you're going to run into issues with VSTs, some of which won't work because they weren't developed for Linux. Yeah, you can probably put a virtual machine in Linux. This is some advanced shit that you can probably do to run Windows inside of a virtual machine. Obviously, take a huge performance hit when you do that, as virtual machines tend to require way more specs than you would actually if you had the hardware itself. Just to simulate the hardware, like I tried simulating a Pentium 2 450 megahertz processor on that, and I was pushing it on my Mac with an M5 in it, which is really good at single core shit. And yeah, it was anything over that, I believe, if I started to get into the Windows XP era of machines, that early 2000s computers. Honestly, I mostly just use crossover for those types of games if it works. Problem with crossover is it's still in the growing process. It doesn't work for everything. You can create a bottle on the Mac for Windows 9, Windows 10, Windows 8. You can go all the way back to Windows 98. I tried doing that and I couldn't get it to work, whereas I could put something in my virtual machine and it worked. So there's a lot of problems when you're using these translation things. But like I said, Steam is leading the way. If you want to leave, and you're a gamer especially, if you want to leave Windows behind and you want to play games on your computer, keep an eye on what Valve is doing because they are leading the charge to get us off of Windows. They're still providing shit for Windows. You still get Steam on Windows, all of that. Their goal is so you can use Steam on any machine that you can possibly use. That's their goal. But for their hardware, they don't want to give a dime to Microsoft. All right? They want you in their ecosystem. They want you to buy their hardware. Their Steam Deck was very successful, by the way. It's basically Steam Deck is one of these that Valve made themselves and put Steam OS on and runs most games. Not all games, but basically the games that you can run on Steam OS, you can run on Bazzite Linux as well through the Steam OS like app that's included with it, and it comes pre-installed, ready to rumble, and you're right into Steam after you've done the install process. And there's even a desktop link on Bazite that you click on it, and it puts you into the Steam Deck experience, essentially. And it's not just big picture. I do believe it is the actual Steam Deck experience because it looks different than big picture, which you can run on Windows, by the way. But I know I've got really technical, and some of y'all aren't into all of that. I just wanted to let you know what I'm into nowadays. And the other things I'm looking at for divorcing Microsoft and a lot of these greedy corporations like Nvidia, and I do want to leave Nvidia, but AMD, they're all in it together. That's the problem. So I'm trying to take control of this area of my life from the corporations as much as possible. So there's two things I'm leaning on. Going back vintage, going back retro, anything you can do that's retro right now that takes your time away from, they'll notice it when they don't have access to your data, and they're seeing you haven't turned on your machine in forever and all of this other shit, and that they're not reaching you, and they're pushing all these forced updates on you that you haven't updated because you haven't fucking turned your machine on because you're doing something else with your time. So number one thing to try and pull out of this shit is to do other things with your time. Retro collecting, that's a shit show right now as far as buying old consoles or old things that you can actually own that don't connect to the internet, that you put a game in and it's the same game 10 years from now as it is now, running on same hardware. Maybe you got to buy something to convert it to modern TVs or whatnot. I don't have to because I have a TV from that era that I can hook. I have two TVs from that era because I bought one to resell and I never resold it. But it's a small one, small LCD when it first came out type thing. I bought it so I could work DVD players and check them out and do all of that. I bought it for like $10. So, you can go into thrift stores and find these old TVs still right now for a decent price, usually like $25, $30 for a big 1080p with all the things that you could hook to in the 2000s. But using old tech, old games, emulation, those types of things are one solution. The more of your time you give to those things and you still like gaming or like being on the screen, but you don't want to pay huge amounts of money to do it, that's an option. When you're in your thrift stores, look at your DVDs and Blu-rays. I see a lot younger people now in the thrift stores thumbing through the $2 DVDs, and I understand why. They're tired. They want to cut the cord. That's one of the things you got to do. I depend on the internet a lot, and that gives these corporations a way to control and manipulate me. But if you ever want to cut that down, just don't give them your time. You have control of your time and what you do. Every time I turn on my Windows laptop, I'm giving Microsoft what they want. So the less often I do that, the less they're getting, the less control they have of what I'm doing. Same thing for my Mac, and Linux is the free platform of freedom. So I'm keeping that in my back pocket just in case Apple loses its mind and enshittifies itself to the point where they're no longer giving you a good product for your money. But I will say my Mac M5, good product for my money. I have absolutely loved every second I've had it. I have not been frustrated at all with it. It's doing most of the things. I'm asking more of it than the average person would ask of a Mac, and it's living up to a lot. It's doing a lot more than I thought it could do. As been a lifetime Microsoft user, switching to Mac, I am impressed. I'm generally impressed because there's stuff on there that I can do without issue that Microsoft I can't. That is what really nailed me. When I got my music shit working flawlessly and I saw some of the capabilities, I could take this little ass fucking laptop with me and make music with just headphones, and that's it. Just plug some headphones in and I can make music with it. Yeah, it's not as fun as playing on a keyboard or tapping my drums in on an MPC or any of the fucking other fun parts of music making. But if I just want to sit down and be creative and make a song, I can do it on there, and I can do it on there in such a way where even if I brought like a little MIDI keyboard with me, it wouldn't be delayed. Oh, I could. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit. All I got to do is bring a little MIDI keyboard with me, and I could just make music anywhere on battery for hours. Fuck you, Microsoft. So that was, I've been very happy with the $2,000 I spent on my MacBook. Very unhappy with the $2,000 I spent on that MSI Stealth 18 laptop. That is, you know, and that will be my last Windows machine that I ever purchase. Straight up. Any hardware I buy going forward, if that's even possible anymore, it will be probably either from Valve and their Steam machine stuff or something that I can have pre-installed with Linux where I'm not paying for Windows. So basically secondhand, um, secondhand market essentially. And that's the other issue. That's the other way you can get off of it. Keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, that kind of stuff, and look for secondhand tech. And then you're not paying NVIDIA and all of those other fuckers for their shit. You're paying some dude and decided to restore or fix something, or maybe they just had something and they need the money. That's who you're giving the money to. You're not giving it to the corporation. It doesn't show up in their bottom line. Their shareholders don't know that you bought your shit secondhand. And they want to get rid of that. Oh, they're doing everything in their power, removing rights to repair and that kind of stuff. They're doing everything in their power to force you to buy new. And that's what Microsoft did to really piss me off too. You're not going to brick half of the computers I have and then expect me to fucking keep giving you money. It's not happening. Nope. So I will not purchase brand new another Microsoft machine because I'm not paying $150 for a operating system to fucking control me. You can go fuck yourself, Microsoft. I don't care. And I'll be selling that Xbox Series X as soon as I get my Blu-ray player put in there and wipe it off, reset it and everything. I'll probably put that up on sale in Facebook Marketplace. And I will do so at a competitive price because they jacked up the prices for all their hardware. So, yeah, it'll probably sell fairly quickly. But we'll see. I don't know. A lot of people want something like that that's going to spy on them. But once I get it replaced, I don't need it in my little room anymore. And I hardly ever game on it. Ever since Game Pass, I got rid of that. And even then, I didn't really find myself reaching for it very often. I always went back to my Windows machine at the time, which is what they're banking on. It's probably why they did all the stupid shit with their cloud shit. Well, I won't be a member of that cloud. I'm not, and that's what I'm working on right now before they get their control. They don't have the control just yet, but it's coming. And I know it's coming. So I'm doing the things I can, do now. And the other thing is not wanting these new games that require these obscene levels of hardware. That's the other way out. And developers, trust me, if the more of us that pull out of that, they're going to make games for the market. And if the market decides, you know what, NVIDIA, fuck your $2,000 GPU. I really don't care if I can see my reflection in 4K, which they can't, by the way. They lied to you about that. It says 4K, but guess what? It's upscaled. And sometimes it's upscaling from 720p while you're playing it because the performance is that bad for these games. It's all a lie. And not to mention, you can't even resolve 4K unless you got a big ass fucking your eyes, your eyeballs. 1080p is great, by the way. 1080p is like the sweet spot for your fucking eyeballs. Unless you have a 72-inch fucking TV and you're sitting 7 feet from it or, close to it. You don't need 4K. So you don't need to pay for the $2,000 GPU. You could probably get it done 3 generations ago, or with a Mac M5. Seems to be doing just fine for 1080p. And you don't need ray trace lighting, real-time ray trace, and all of that shit. Yeah, it looks pretty, but the games that they're using it suck. And they're giving you shitty performance in exchange. Play older games. Or play games that were developed to not need those requirements. And I'm telling you, if we all vote with our wallet there, the developers will see that and stop making games that force you to upgrade your hardware every year or 2 years. Play games that would have ran on whatever you have currently. Let's be happy with what we got at this point. I know I say that because I bought this fucking Mac recently, and I'm very happy with it. I need to learn to stop FOMOing and stop gear acquisition syndrome, which is a thing. And I got that from photography. Like I went through so many fucking high-tech cameras chasing 4K sweetness, image quality, crispness, fucking all of the bullshit, only to have those cameras gathering dust right now while I use a camcorder with a 1-inch sensor to record my videos. That's an example of what I'm talking about with gaming or with tech in general. This phone I bought straight out. I don't lease it or anything. This is my recent phone purchase because my other one had a cracked screen. It was like I used it as long as I could. And it's going to be the same with this. And, eventually I'd like to get maybe that this isn't shoved up my ass, but let's face it, we're all addicted to that. I can't kick that addiction. I still use my phone. And I use it to make money, so I'm always going to have my face glued to a phone screen. And it's spying on me. It's doing all the evil things that Microsoft is doing. Only Google's doing it as opposed to Microsoft, but we can get into that. And I don't see a way to ever divorce Google at this point. So if Google decides to go full 100% evil, which they're riding that line right now, but that's another video. We're here to bitch about Microsoft. But yeah, and Google tried to take a chunk of Microsoft too with their Chromebooks. Remember those? I remember those. Didn't they have Chrome OS or something? Yeah, didn't quite work, did it? Seems one evil corporation trying to take another evil corporation's business isn't working out. But I do have high hopes for Valve in making Linux a thing and, divorcing Microsoft. So that'll be once I do this, that'll be the last step. Like I said, I'm keeping my MSI, and whenever I feel the need to do something I can't do on my Mac or on Linux, then I'll reach for MSI. And I feel like this is all software issues right now, so I feel like as Bazzite gets updated more, as Valve works more on its Proton system, basically the way it translates Windows titles, as we get more and more people, more and more market share. They've gone up to 5% of market share right now. I think when they get to 10 or 15%, and then you got Linux and Mac kind of competing for some space there, Mac's probably going to be able to more easily capitalize on Windows's bullshit right now because they haven't done a lot of the same things. But in the back of your mind, when you just been fucked over by Microsoft, and Apple's a pretty big company that's been around just as long as Microsoft, you're going to wonder, hey, is Apple going to do this to me too? Can I trust them to continue to not be enshittified? And there's little signs in the Apple ecosystem of enshittification. But as far as I can tell, they're still way ahead of the curve in terms of giving you value for the money you spend than Microsoft at this point and NVIDIA. So, and by switching to Mac, by the way, you're divorcing from NVIDIA. And same thing with Linux, which is more optimized for AMD. Not that AMD isn't fucking us over too, because they're all having fun together. But yeah, NVIDIA, I want to divorce them as well. So if I can get away from using NVIDIA video cards in the future, I will do so. And so I'll only buy AMD, and I'll only buy a machine that I won't pay a machine that has brand new that has Windows installed, because I don't want to pay them any more money. Not paying any subscriptions to Microsoft that I'm aware of. So I'm good there. I do still have some Blizzard stuff, but I'm not going to World of Warcraft or any of the subscription-based stuff. And at some point, they'll probably just decide, well, you can't have that game anymore anyway, in which I'll go back to my retro versions of the games that I have, because there are retro versions of the games that I play on Battle.net. So yeah, and then Good Old Games, also, that's a good front end store for retro titles that work right out of the box on most systems. That you still have to run through a lot of them on crossover on Mac, but Steam also has a lot of retro games as well, and sometimes you find those and they're like $4, $5. To me, the fact that I can, like, the winter sale for Steam is going on right now. That's how I found Cyberpunk 2077 directly for the Mac for $20. But I also found like 2 other games. I forget what they were, but they were mainstream titles at one point, and I paid $5. And if you just watch the sales that happen, you will pay thrift store prices. Yes, you don't own it, technically, I guess. Do you own the license to play it? But as I've said, I've been a Steam Valve customer for years. Like, I have a pretty decent sized Steam library, and I've never had an issue. Not to say it can't happen. You are vulnerable if you're a Steam user, but they still have my trust. Valve has not violated my trust in any way throughout my time as a customer. Something that Microsoft should have fucking learned. All right? But they got too cocky and too greedy, and whoever's running that shit now. Ever since Bill opted out of it. Not that he's the world's great. Don't get me started on him. All right, that's enough for this fucking long ass video. I rambled a lot, but I felt like I owed you some time, since I didn't put out a video like I wanted to this week earlier. Please like and subscribe for more shit, and I'll make more shit. And also, there will be a video coming up, if you've made it this far, for my members. So if you're not a channel member, it's like $3 or something like that, $2-3. And that's for the base level. Other ones have different perks. I do plan on releasing my first member exclusive video over the weekend, which will be a reveal of the company I work for. Some of you may have figured it out, some of you haven't. But as I have no desire to return to the company I work for, it's now time to reveal who it was and why I left, and why trucking in general, but also the company itself, has gone downhill. So I'll be releasing that as a member exclusive video sometime in the next 3-4 days, 5 if things are rough. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit, and happy holidays, or whatever you worship, or whoever. Have a Merry fucking Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'm still going to make some more videos. It's going to be a little harder because my girlfriend's on vacation, so we're going to be spending time where it's harder for me to make videos. I don't like making videos with people watching me. That's an issue. So, but I'm definitely, there'll be a little bit lighter on the content. I am going to try and put out a few more videos before the end of the month. Um, but just letting you know, become a member, help me make more time to do videos, and I'll do that and shit. So, also, let me know in the comments, what are your solutions for getting away from this control, especially with our tech, which has become so, you know, intimately injected into our lives, and I don't know. I've maybe the new movement to the no buy movement and going back to retro tech and retro everything is the way. Go back to the old days with nostalgia. Now, yeah, you're taking a hit in graphics and all of that, and actual visual fidelity of your movies. But like I said, 1080p Blu-rays, those are fine. I don't see an issue. And I tried watching Vikings on DVD because I bought the DVDs from Walmart at one point. It's still watchable. If you're sitting far away from your TV and your TV's a little smaller, it's still watchable. But not for a big theater type experience. DVDs aren't going to cut it. So lower your screen size. That's it. That's all it takes. Stop giving a fuck about 4K. Lower your screen size to one that your eyes don't give a shit that it's 1080p. You'll be able to tell that, you have the right size because it'll look crisp even though it's 1080p. And by the way, 720p is fine for a screen this size. 720p. Also, gaming, 720p. That's what this is designed to run. With plenty of bells and whistles in the palm of your hand. So it's basically a computer in the palm of your hand. And since it's AMD, it's going right to Linux. Fuck you, Windows. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit. And it's getting harder and harder trying to divorce myself from all of these corporations trying to control us. But I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Even though Apple now controls me and they're a big corporation. All right, there's no way out. You're fucked.